So there's these rules coming that are being changed in the United Football League. And the reason I think that this is interesting is that oftentimes this is a testing ground for the National Football League, and we could see these in the NFL. So I wanted to just bounce a couple of these off you and gauge interest for people on these. So the first is that a very, very big step is being taken. The UFL is saying no tush push in our league.
There it is.
They are eliminating the tush push and anything that looks like the tush push. By the way, NFL note, did you see that it is staying? Last year, we were so close.
Yep.
The Packers and a bunch of other teams got together and said, we don't want the tush push. Then there was a vote. It came down to the wire. It ended up staying. And at that time, if you remember, we all just said, oh, this time next year, they'll get rid of it. As of right now, according to the competition committee, no one is even pitching to get rid of the tush push. I don't know what changed. I guess it's because the Eagles weren't quite as effective this year. I'm not really sure.
Which makes me hate it, right? In other words, to me, the arguments for, I always thought were incorrect and disingenuous. It's because you can't stop it. And if it goes away because it's not as effective, that was never my argument.
I agree.
And that's
still a bad play.
Yeah, that's frustrating to me.
It's awful to watch.
Yeah.
You would think it's more of a risk for injuries. And if the teams wanted to get rid of it a year ago, but now that the Eagles' percentage went from 93 to 79 or something.
Just
now
like a regular quarterback sneak.
Well, it's okay.
Yeah.
I think that's the wrong argument to make.
I know, and that's frustrating to me. So, because the business picked up for the Bills, for example. They used it as much to more effect than anybody.
Remember when Allen ran a tush push and got 10 yards in the playoffs?
Yeah.
Went from the 11-yard line to the 1-yard line.
It's a pretty unique one right there, I suppose. But yeah, this is it's the correct call. It's the correct thing. The aiding of a runner should be banned right away. Like, that's the easiest thing to me.
That's why I wonder, though, everybody's claiming it's because the Eagles got worse at it. I think it might be, dude, we fought the fight last year. It didn't get passed. We're not doing it again. It might just be that simple. Now, I would go back to the battleground again and raise my,
Yeah, as soon as they
bayonet.
go, anybody have new business? I'd sit there with I'd stretch out to make sure my little hand was ready to raise and say, let's get rid of it. I propose it.
All right, so here are the really interesting ones. Here are the big changes. So the first is a 4-point field goal for successful field goal kicks from 60 yards or further. So if you kick a 60-plus yarder, you get an extra point on a 3-point field goal. What is your take on the 4-point field goal?
So I've always loved the idea, believe it or not. I have. The idea that something close in is worth the same as something 50 yards further away, that had never made sense to me. In basketball, it's worth more when you get past the 22-plus feet. But for me, the football numbers of 2, very rarely, but 3, 6, and 7, with the extra point in there almost counting as a 1, with the others have to come first, are so sacred, that messes up my math too much. I don't want it to be 11-7. I know that's not a great argument for anything, but I don't want it's 7-7 right before halftime, someone kicks a 4-point field goal, and now it's 11-7. I don't want that.
Basically, you don't want to see unfamiliar numbers on the NFL scoreboard.
Unless it's for an exceptional reason. Like, if I tune into a game and it's a weird score, that's fascinating, right? Because was there a safety? How did we get that? That's unusual. Or this 2-point conversion. When it just now becomes routine because there's a 60-yarder every other game, it's less enticing to me.
I don't know that it has actually hurt them, but one of the complaints you do see when it comes to these spring leagues is the quirkiness and the oddities of the scores. And like the scoregami scores that you're going to get, because they have a 1, a 2, and a 3-point conversion. So there are a lot more 2-point plays.
Right. There's
a lot of 6s that stay there, or 8s or what have you. And so you do have a lot of these like 16-6, 16-8 games that are way less prevalent in the NFL. I don't care that much about that. I understand the aesthetics of not wanting to see oddities on the scoreboard. But to me, the 4-point field goal doesn't really work. I'm not a big fan of it. It's interesting. And to your point, I think, if I boot a 64-yarder and you want to say that that's a way more impressive feat than a 29-yarder and you want to give me the point, I don't hate that. The problem I have is with starting field position now, kicking a 65-yard attempt is so easy. We're talking about getting to just across midfield. Okay, so a 65-yard attempt is the equivalent of being at the plus 47-yard line. Well, teams are regularly taking over at the 30. That is a 18-yard dig on 1st and 10. Now another 1st and 10 from my 48, 2-yard run, 3-yard run, incompletion, and instead of a punt, we're kicking a 65-yard field goal. I got one first down. I basically had one good football play, and now I'm about to get 4 points. If I go on a 97-yard drive from my own 3-yard line on 17 plays, all that work, all that success for 11 men going down the field, I get 6 points out of that? It's not big enough, that differential. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
It's way too easy to get a long field goal attempt, worth 4 now. And also, I just think the difference between a touchdown and a field goal should be as big as possible. The settling for the kick, that's an axiom as old as time. You can't win with 3. You got to win with 7 or whatever. If it's 4 versus 6, and especially in a sport like the UFL, where you're doing like a lot of 2 and 3 point conversions that don't happen, so most touchdowns end up actually being 6, not 7. Well, you're just able to get 2 first downs and kick a long field goal, and it's almost the same as my drive. I don't like that. So
I like that view. I like that view better.
It's fine in the spring league, which I just take my kids and go have a blast, and it's fun, and Audi Field's awesome. And if you've never been to a Defenders game, you should check it out because it's the best. But I would not ever want to see this in the NFL.
I like your reasoning better than mine. I mean, I like the idea of the separation between the touchdown and the field goal because it doesn't feel as much like settling anymore, right? It's like it's advantageous to you to go, we're just going to, if we need 2 scores, I'll run 2 plays, kick my 4-pointer, and, then my onside kick to see if I can get 11. I don't like it. It changes the game too much for me.
I also have a couple of questions about how they would execute the 4 points. So if I am at the 45-yard line on the plus side of the field on, say, a 3rd and 11, 3rd and 11 is not good enough.
I know where you're going. Call it a 3rd and 17.
Yeah, 3rd and 17, and I know I'm not going to get it. What is to prevent me? You probably can't take a knee or whatever, but let's say you could. But maybe I just run an end around and a guy falls at the 48-yard line for a 3-yard loss, and now I can kick a 65-yarder, and I've strategically played my way into the longer field goal. Instead of 62, it's 65. I don't like that. Now, maybe you can't have a negative play leading up to it. They could have that rule. The other thing I saw a couple people say is, well, what is to prevent someone, if you're kicking a 61-yard field goal, from just jumping off sides and making it a 56-yard field goal, and now you don't get 4, now you only get 3. I think that one's easier to clean up because if there's a penalty on the other team, even if the field goal's closer, it could still be worth 4. If it was originally 60+, you commit a penalty to
smart.
make it sub 60. I'm not going to let you bail yourself out of a point.
Well, I was going to think you could decline it, but that's actually
I just
smarter.
get an easier chance to get my 4 points.
Mm-hmm.
So that one's easier, but how do you handle the team that strategically on a long 3rd down strategizes to the longer field goal?
That's why I don't like it. I mean, because again, that's part of football is when you're doing this, you go, okay, let's take the check down, let's take a little bit back to make the field goal easier. That's a strategy thing, and you remove some of that for a quarterback pretending to fall down or something to move back 2 yards to get a 4-pointer. Again, it's too messy, it's too clunky.
I was talking to someone who's been involved in establishing rules for leagues in the past, and their point was they didn't like this because they said you don't want to highlight kickers. That shouldn't really be the goal. They said if anything, you want to highlight how great the kicker is. And so you could do like a precision test thing instead of a power test. So in other words, if you hit this post centered up between the 2 posts, or if there's a very small area of the net, that you've got to drill
the net within the net.
Yeah, in this range or something, maybe you get a certain point. But I think that actually is interesting and smart because
that's how I feel. I want less emphasis whenever possible.
Yeah, you don't want the story to be the kickers, but that's something I guess potentially that could come to the NFL. So what would you guys think about a 4th point on a field goal of 60+? Let's go to JB in Alexandria. JB, this is being adopted for the DC Defenders United Football League. What do you make of it?
Hey guys, so I'm not terribly out of love with the idea, but you kind of touched on this point earlier, and I want to kind of present this scenario that you touched on. If you have a great kicker, what would prevent a quarterback from, let's say, at the 20-yard line, making a determination? I'm not confident I can make this touchdown that we need, but I am confident I can throw the ball backwards 25 yards, have my own guy kneel it, and then attempt that 60-plus yard field goal. That, to me, kind of takes away from the game a little bit, and it also would be a tragedy for all sports bettors everywhere. Thanks for your time.
Yeah.
Sports betting's a big deal. They actually have the lines and the over-under right there on the score bug in the United Football League.
It's just too messy. That's what I keep coming back to. It's messy.
Yeah, his extreme example would never happen because in that case, you're choosing a 60-plus yard field goal over a 38-yard field goal. and the possibility of one more point isn't worth that unless you're trailing by 4.
There it is. And so you go, I can't get a touchdown here. We're more likely to kick a 65-yarder than we are to throw a 27-yard touchdown when everyone's standing at the goal line. So fullback, running back, line up 30 yards behind. I'll turn around and pitch it to you. You take a knee.
Again, I actually reached out to the league. We'll try to get somebody on this week to answer a few of these questions. But I think the only way you could do that, because again, if you're down 4, rather than playing your way into that field goal by running backwards, which, as he said, would be a complete sham and ridiculous, I think you can't have negative plays on your series like leading up to that, maybe, to get access to the 60+. Maybe that's how it works. So, like, there's nothing where you went backwards that results in the field goal.
So if the defense forces a sack on 3rd and 4, it's a huge play because now you can't get 4.
Exactly.
Something like that?
Or you could do it in that way, like, I have to stop once I get to range where it's 60+. So I have 3 more yards to play with. In 4 more yards, it's a 59-yard field goal, and I can't go backwards. So do we just kick it here? It's like that strategy would actually be interesting, because if I want the 4 and I can't lose any yards beforehand, we need to settle right now for 64, unless we think we could get exactly 3 or 4 on this play and get closer and be right at 60 yards or something like that. We'll take more calls on that in a second, 800-636-1067. There's another UFL rule that I want to get into, though, that I find really interesting. So I'll brush past this one really fast because this one isn't one of the big ones. They're going to college rules, 1 foot in bounds. I hate that because this league gets you ready for the NFL in theory, or is like the bridge between college and the National Football League. And everything I would think you want to do is to feel more professional and legitimate. And now you're copying the college game. They're claiming that it's quite literally just a player safety thing. That a lot of guys get hit or you get shoved out of bounds trying to get your second foot down. And so that's why they're doing it that way. So whatever. I would never want the league to change the 2 steps to get in bounds.
Agreed.
I think college is kind of amateur in the 1 foot, same as high school, the 1 foot rule. But the one that is actually really, really interesting is, how about this? No punting inside the 50-yard line. So, no punts will be allowed from anywhere inside the 50 plus 49 and in. This rule does not apply after the 2-minute warning of either half. Once the ball is made ready for play inside the 50, anywhere on your opponent's side of the field, a team cannot punt even if a subsequent penalty or loss of yardage moves the ball behind the 50, which is what we're talking about.
Yep.
So once you get to the 49-yard line, you can't, like, go backwards now and then be able to punt it. I don't care if it's 4th and 21, if you're at your own 37, but you used to be across the 50, you now have to go for this still. If the ball is on the 50-yard line, you punt. But when you're in plus territory, this is like Madden rules. Me and my brother used to play Madden all the time with our buddies, and our rules were 4th and 3 or more, you have to punt until final 2 minutes of the game, or the 4th quarter, I guess it was. And then if it was your side of the 50, you had to punt. And if you're on the plus side of the 50, you could go at any time, basically. Like, it could be 4th and 1, 4th and 2. Right. But they're saying, as soon as you get into plus territory, there's no, use a golf term here, laying up. There's no bringing out Tressway to pin somebody at the 7. So you get a lot less of that. Starting drives at your own 4 leads to more offense. You get more of those critical 4th down plays. I got to be honest, Danny. I do not hate it.
My heart beats for that. That's perfect. That's the point to me, is the more exciting plays. Now, with all due respect to the master craftsman that is Tressway, coffin cornering somebody, and you saw how big a play it was in the Super Bowl or in the NFC Championship game a couple different times for the Seahawks punter, putting it in perfect spots. That's great. That's all well and good. But that's not why I showed up. That's not why I'm here. I want offense and defense. I want guys going at it. I want have to get it plays, etc. I don't want the ability, if you have to take it off a coach's plate, that's fine. But I don't want the ability to go, we'll live to fight another day. I want aggressiveness. I want it to be decided on the field, a little bit less in that strategy department right there. I love making guys go for it.
It's more offense against defense.
Yeah, that's what I want.
Less special teams. That's a hard thing for me to feel like is a bad idea. Now, this has been used in other leagues, and they had issues with it. I don't think it's going to go that smoothly because there's too much quirkiness around midfield. There's 2:04 left versus 1:57 left. That play, now all of a sudden it changes and you can punt if you wait the extra 7 seconds across the 2-minute warning. So coaches are going to have to not just master time management. Can you imagine poor Dan Quinn He doesn't just have to know how to work the clock, but the clock around the rules, around midfield. So there's a lot of that. But generally, I would say what the UFL's done very well is they haven't really jumped the shark with their rules. They've mostly just had some cool conceptual things. This feels like they're now getting a little bit cute. They're pushing the envelope. They're throwing stuff against the wall to see what sticks. Not a bad thing in a spring league.
Willing to do it, yeah.
But the question for you guys is, would you want to see either of these come to the NFL? 4 points for 60-plus on a field goal, or no punting inside the 50-yard line. Toby, I know you're out on both of these. If you had to adopt one in the NFL, which one would annoy you less?
Probably the field goal one, but I'm not keen on it. Could decide the game, like those sorts of things where you can start gaming the system a little bit. I'm all for trying different things and seeing, and that's why spring football I think is great, is it allows them to experiment with some of these things, but I don't ever want to see either of these adopted.
Well, how about, Toby makes a good point on 59 versus 60. How critical is the spot on the play before that?
Yeah.
Because there is a difference. Like sometimes you'll see the ball spotted in that half-yard area, and you're watching a field goal, and at home you're like, oh, it's 49. And then they'll be like, from 50. It's like, oh, I guess it was 3/4 of the way to the yard line. That 6 inches, and we know 6 inches is, an
ungodly amount.
Absolutely massive.
That's overindulgent. That's more than anyone needs.
Way more than average, right? But that could be the difference between winning and losing.
Exactly.
Between living
and dying.
The 6 inches.
6 inches.
In front of your face.
Right in front of your face.